Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. You might recognise the car I'm in today. It's my 2012 Range Rover Westminster that I bought last autumn. It was a bit scruffy and unloved when I bought it, but I spent over £3,000 making it as nice as I possibly could. When I finished with it, it looked stunning. I'd have happily kept it myself. It had 4 odd tyres on, so I got rid of those and replaced them with 4 matching Pirellis. That cost me about £1,000. I had an engine service done, a gearbox service done, a bit of paint work, and it really did look the part when I'd finished. Then I finished my video with it, and I remember saying in the video that I'd have to qualify the next potential owner of this car to make sure that they were the right person for the car. That might have sounded a little bit harsh, but you really do need deep pockets to run a car like this. Nothing's cheap. Whenever I do a video with a car like this, I always insist that you need a healthy rainy day fund for any maintenance or repairs. Without that, you're just leaving yourself too exposed. It's too risky, and I just wouldn't advise you do it. Anyway, a couple of days later I got to work and my colleague said, "Right Matt, good news, I've sold your car for £13,000. So I thought, right, okay, that'll do. Nice healthy profit for once. Then he said, "I've sent all the paperwork over to the finance company. I'm just waiting for them to approve it now." So I said, "Look, call the guy up, because if you can't afford to buy the car in the first place without finance, then this isn't the car for you, or he's not the right customer for this car." He said, "You can't really say that." So I said, "Well, why not? It's the truth." Now, I'm not trying to be rude or belittle anybody at all. That really isn't my intention here. But if you need to borrow money to buy a 135,000 mile 10-year-old Range Rover, then you really need your head testing. Just buy something simple, live within your means. Don't buy an old high mileage Range Rover, because it will end in tears, I promise you. I always get lambasted in the comments section when I say something like this, and I'm really not trying to be rude. I'm trying to offer sage, sensible advice. Anyhow, the finance got approved and he came and took it. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, it broke. It came up with a restricted performance light which put the car in limp mode. Then the owner gets straight on the phone to me and then turns up at the garage with what I can only describe as compensation face. You know that pose you see people making in the Daily Mirror when their child's been given a cold Happy Meal? That face. I see this sort of thing all the time and it just isn't fair. He accused me of just tarting up the bodywork and doing nothing to it mechanically, which was quite insulting really, given the amount of money I'd spent on it. You see how I prepare cars, I do tend to go overboard. Who else would put 4 brand new Pirellis on at a cost of £1,000? Who'd do a gearbox service? There can't be many other dealers in the UK who do things like that. But I do it for the love of cars. I do it to try and prolong the car's life. What I wanted to say was, you, a fully grown adult, bought a high mileage old car and then it broke. What did you expect? Don't start pointing the finger at me. But I know better than to rise to such insults, so I just let it ride. What I suspected happened is that he'd got a case of buyer's remorse when he realised he'd bought such a needy, expensive car. A car that cost £140 to fill a tank. A car that costs £650 a year to tax. He should never have bought it. And the consumer rights laws here in the UK, being the way they are, never seem to take the side of the dealer, ever. They never take into consideration how it's been driven, how it's been looked after, what they've done to it, where they've been in it. No, none of that. It's always the horrible, greedy dealer's fault. That's just how it works. I'm used to it now. I do genuinely have sympathy when something breaks, but I just wish customers would be a bit more realistic with their expectations. Add this week, for example, I sold a Citroën DS3, a 2012 or 13 Citroën DS3 with 80,000 miles on the clock. Quite a nice car as it goes, with full service history, and it belonged to my cousin. She bought a newer car off me and then traded this one in. So I sold it to a lady who was buying it for a daughter. Then precisely 1 week later, it broke down. So I said, "Take it to my mechanic, we'll put you in a courtesy car and we'll sort it." It turned out to be a couple of the blades had snapped off the fan, so it wasn't a big job. Then the next week it broke again. So I asked them to take it back to my mechanics. This time the engine management light had come on. Then I got a big long-winded email like War and Peace saying how she was disappointed with the car, she'd lost faith in it, she'd lost faith in me, she just wanted something that was going to be reliable. Felt like saying, you bought a 10-year-old Citroën done 80,000 miles. Let's get real here, can we, for a second? If you want something that's going to be totally reliable, then buy a brand new Igo. But anything else is really pot luck. This is what I'm up against. I feel like banging my head against a brick wall sometimes. It's frustrating because it's an argument that I'll never win. After doing the job for so long, I know that I shouldn't sell older high mileage cars, but the problem is, especially now, nobody's got any money. So when I stock the nicer, newer, more expensive cars, they don't sell. There's no business there. So I have to sell the cheaper stuff. They're the only things that people seem to buy. It really is frustrating. You're just stuck in this never-ending cycle, this revolving door of negativity. I'll tell you another story while I'm on this rant. I had a message the other day from a guy on Instagram who'd bought a 16-year-old VW Touareg, and it looked immaculate, to be fair. It looked really nice, but within a week it'd broken down. The engine light had come on. He'd got a quote of around £900 to fix it, so he sent me a message asking for my advice. So I said, technically you need to get back onto the dealer because it's their responsibility to put it right or refund you, but let's be fair, it's a 16-year-old car, so what I would do personally as a human being is offer to split the bill with them. And he said, no, I'm not doing that, I've only had the car a week. It's the dealer's fault for selling an old car. Now, I'm really not bad-mouthing this guy, by the way, it just made me realise what most of the general public must think. I didn't reply because I couldn't be bothered getting into an argument, but I thought, no, hang on a minute, it's your fault for buying a 16-year-old car, surely, not the dealer's fault for selling it. This is quickly turning into one of those rant videos, and that wasn't my intention, but I think this is the problem with society these days. Nobody wants to be responsible for their own actions, it's always somebody else's fault. You see this sort of thing all the time, especially on TV adverts. Have you been clumsy and had an accident at work? Well, it's not your fault, it's obviously your boss's fault. Get a claim in, take them to the cleaners. Have you been sick on holiday because you got carried away with the Sambuca and the San Miguel? Well, it's not your fault, obviously. It's Hotel Paradiso's fault, it's probably food poisoning. Get a claim in. I heard an advert on the radio the other day, some law firm, and it said, have you ever sent money away to a lover overseas that turned out to be a scam? Call us now, we'll get your money back for you. I'm sorry, but if you've lost your money sending it to a ladyboy in Thailand, then it's your own stupid fault. But not here in 21st century Britain, it's not. It's always somebody else's fault. I've said this before, but there should be a caveat to consumer rights laws which doesn't include used products. How can it include used products? It just doesn't make sense. I fully get and support that if you buy a brand new washing machine and it starts leaking, then you should be able to take it back to the shop and swap it for a new one. But what if you buy a 16-year-old washing machine, which, let's face it, the only reason you're buying a 16-year-old washing machine is because you can't afford a brand new one? What happens when that leaks? Here in the UK, you've got exactly the same rights as the person that bought a brand new one. It doesn't make sense. I hear this sort of thing all the time when a customer gets arsey because they've bought a £3,000 car and it's broken. Well, £3,000 is a lot of money to me. Yes, it's a lot of money to me too, but not for a used car. £20,000 is a lot of money for me. Yes, it is a lot of money to me as well, but not for a used Bentley. Get in the real world. You can't buy something for a fraction of its cost new and then expect it to perform as well as the new product. I don't get it. Anyway, back to the Range Rover. So I asked the customer to take it to my mechanics and let them sort it out, obviously at my expense. My mechanic explained that one of the turbos was leaking, it needed to be replaced, which is quite a big job on the 4.4 litre Range Rover. So I asked my mechanic to sort it at my expense and I offered the customer a loan car. But that was the ideal opportunity for the customer to reject it because he wasn't happy with it. And yes, Mr. Customer, I quite agree, if you bought a 135,000 mile Range Rover, you shouldn't have any inconveniences at all, should you? This was the ideal scenario for somebody suffering with buyer's remorse to knock it back to the dealer. So in the end, I gave him his money back and I thought I'll just fix it and then sell it again. He'd ended up sitting at my mechanics for a few weeks until they could find time to get it in the workshop. Then when they eventually did find time, they tried to start it and it just wouldn't start. At that point, my mechanic called me to say, look, it's quite a big job this, it's probably best going to a specialist. So I found a specialist, one who did engine rebuilds and engine repairs and that sort of thing. I had it transported to them and they sorted it. It was there for a good few months while they sorted it out. The trouble with the engine on these is so tightly packed into the engine bay that you've got to take the engine out of the car and onto a bench to sort the turbo. And while they were at it, it didn't just need one turbo, it needed both of them replacing. Apparently the reason it wouldn't start at my mechanics was that one of the turbos had blocked for some reason, so it wasn't letting any air get through. So as some sort of fail-safe thing, it just wouldn't start the engine. As you can imagine, it's quite a lot of work to take the engine out of one of these. So my bill was, you ready for this? £7,336. The labour alone was about half that, and that goes back to my original point. You need deep pockets to run a car like this. It's all well and good saying, oh, you can buy a Range Rover for £5,000. Yeah, but can you run it? Can you afford to put a new turbo on it or both when they break? My guess is not. So what I've decided to do, because I'm so upside down with this car, is put it on the Raffle Shack website so one of you can win it. It's now fully sorted and you can win it for just £5. That way hopefully I can put this sorry story behind me and move on without losing a fortune. So check out raffleshackcompetitions.com. Tickets are just £5 each, and I've limited the number of tickets any one person can buy so you don't get yourself in a mess. And somebody then will end up winning a beautiful Range Rover Westminster with 2 brand new turbos. As you can imagine, I've fallen out of love with this car just because of the heartache it's caused me, but there is something about driving a last of L322. They are a proper Range Rover, they're a bit of class really. However, be warned, they are very expensive to run. I was watching a Lucy on Cars video recently. Now, her and George own a L322 Range Rover facelift like this, and in the last year or so, I think they've spent £7,000 on it. But in the video, she accepted that was just part and parcel of owning a car like this. But what can you do? If you want to drive a car like this, then you've got to expect a large bill every now and then. Well, I think that's about it. There are quite a few morals to this story. One, you need to be responsible for your own actions. Two, if you want to run a Range Rover, you need some sort of rainy day fund and keep topping that fund up. And three, don't buy cheap. If you buy cheap, you buy twice. So I think that's about it. Thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. And yeah, cheers guys. See you next time.